The islands of Arran seen from the Moher cliffs. The 3 whales of Arran, humped in the sun's teeth, make tough bargain with the cuff and statement of the sea. I stand on Moher, the cliffs like coal vaults, see Arran in mourning, thumped to losses by its season's neighbour. Arran, like 3 black whales humped on the water, with a whale's barricade stares out the waves. Arran, with its bleak gates locked, its back to the traders. Arran the widower, Arran with no legs, distended in distance from the stone of Connemara's land. Arran without gain, pebbled in the fussing Atlantic.
The coast. I saw him again today. He looked older. We walked, as we always used to do, along the promenade, up to the pier, along the pier, back down the pier, and back. He was more or less the same, but looked older. I asked him if I had changed. He said, no, as far as he could see. I said, no, probably I had not. He said he could see no sign of it. If anything, I looked younger. I charged him with jesting. He said, no, he was not. He pointed out that he'd used the phrase, if anything. If anything, he said, and turned his eyes, still bright, on me. If anything, you look younger. If anything. If anything, you look older, I said. There's no if anything about that, he retorted. None whatsoever. We took the path we always took, wetter than ever along the cliffs. Seems wetter than ever down here, he said. Uproar in the channel. How can you put up with such lousy weather after all these years? Doesn't it oppress you? Not at all, I replied. Most congenial. Suits me. Do you still have nightmares? He asked. I smiled into the wind. I haven't had a dream since 1956, I said. Bloody shocking racket you used to make, he said. Drowning or something? God, what an aggravation. He spat into the fret. 1 hour in this bloody wet end of the world is enough for me. Don't know how you've survived. But nevertheless, I'm glad to see you blossoming. Blossoming, I said. No, not quite that. Surely you're jesting. But he'd stopped talking. He was looking down at the sea he'd known so well, the roar of our youth. He bought me tea at the railway station. I then walked with him to his train. Glad to see you found your feet, he said. Glad to see you're blossoming. I clasped his hand and thanked him for making the journey.
No Man's Land. We're old friends, Jack and myself. We met at a street corner. I should tell you he'll deny this account. His story will be different. I was standing at a street corner, a car drew up. It was him. He asked me the way to Bolsover Street. I told him Bolsover Street was in the middle of an intricate one-way system. It was a one-way system easy enough to get into. The only trouble was, once in, you couldn't get out. I told him his best bet, if he really wanted to get to Bolsover Street, was to take first left, first right, second right, third on the left, keep his eye open for a hardware shop, go right round the square, keep me to the inside lane, take the second mews on the right and then stop. He'll find himself facing a very tall office block with a crescent courtyard. He can take advantage of this office block. He can go round the crescent, come out the other way, follow the arrows, go past 2 sets of traffic lights and take the next left indicated by the first green filter he comes across. He's got the post office tower in vision the whole time. All he's got to do is reverse into the underground car park, change gear, go straight on, and then find himself in Bolsover Street with no trouble at all. I did warn him, though, he'll still be faced with the problem of having found Bolsover Street, of losing it. I told him I knew of 1 or 2 people who'd been wandering up and down Bolsover Street for years. They'd wasted their bloody youth there. The people who live there, their faces are grey. They're in a state of despair. But nobody pays any attention, you see. All people are worried about is their ill-gotten gains. Anyway, I told him that probably the best thing he could do was to forget the whole idea of ever getting to Bolsover Street. I remember saying to him, this trip you've got in mind, drop it. It could prove fatal. But he said he had to deliver a parcel. Anyway, I took all this trouble with him because he had a nice open face. He looked like a man who'd always do good to others himself. Now, normally, I wouldn't give a fuck. I should tell you, he'll deny this account. His story will be different. When did you last have champagne for breakfast?
It is here. What sound was that? I turn away into the shaking room. What was that sound that came in on the dark? What is this maze of light it leaves us in? What is this stance we take, to turn away and then turn back? What did we hear? It was the breath we took when we first met. Listen, it is here.
Paris. The curtain white in folds. She walks 2 steps and turns. The curtain still. The light staggers in her eyes. The lamps are golden. Afternoon leans silently. She dances in my life. The white day burns. From no man's land.
You did say you had a good war, didn't you?
A rather good one, yes.
How splendid. The RAF?
The Navy.
How splendid. Destroyers?
Torpedo boats.
First rate. Kill any Germans?
1 or 2.
Well done.
And you?
I was in military intelligence.
Ah.
You pursued your literary career after the war?
Oh, yes.
So did I.
I believe you've done rather well.
Oh, quite well, yes. Past my best now.
Did you ever see Stella?
Stella?
You can't have forgotten.
Stella who?
Stella Winstanley.
Winstanley?
Bunty Winstanley's sister.
Oh, Bunty. No, I never see her.
You were rather taken with her.
Was I, old chap? How did you know?
I was terribly fond of Bunty. He was most dreadfully annoyed with you. Wanted to punch you on the nose.
What for?
For seducing his sister.
What business was it of his?
He was her brother.
That's my point. What on earth are you driving at?
Bunty introduced Rupert to Stella. He was very fond of Rupert. He gave the bride away. He and Rupert were terribly old friends. He threatened to horsewhip you.
Who did?
Bunty.
He never had the guts to speak to me himself.
Stella begged him not to. She implored him to stay his hand. She implored him to tell Rupert.
I see. But who was Bunty? Who told Bunty?
I told Bunty. I was frightfully fond of Bunty. I was also frightfully fond of Stella.
You appear to have been a close friend of the family.
Mainly of Arabella's. We used to ride together.
Arabella Hinscott?
Yes,
I knew her at Oxford.
so did I.
I was very fond of Arabella.
Arabella was very fond of me. Bunty was never sure precisely of how fond she was of me, nor of what form her fondness took.
What in God's name do you mean?
Bunty trusted me. I was best man at their wedding. He also trusted Arabella.
I should warn you, I was always extremely fond of Arabella. Her father was my tutor. I used to stay at their house.
I knew her father well. He took a great interest in me.
Arabella was a girl of the most refined and organized sensibilities.
I agree.
Are you trying to tell me you had an affair with Arabella?
A form of an affair. She had no wish for full consummation. She was content with her particular predilection, consuming the male member.
I'm beginning to believe you're a bit of a scoundrel.
Tess. Hello. I think you met my mother once. You knew her when I was a child. It was before my time, actually. She's blonde, unbelievably beautiful, heavenly, but at the same time voluptuous, and a stickler for the right knife and fork. She never believed in spoons. She insists even now that any moderately reasonable person can get through life without resorting to a spoon. This, I can tell you frankly, has caused me infinite perturbation. I love creme caramel. Does it still exist? But you certainly met my mother when I was a tiny little girl. You met her at a party, first lieutenants, officers of the fleet, squadron leaders, pink gin, blue eyes, rhododendrons, total strangers goosing the girls. I'm waiting for my brother. He's 6'5", absolutely charming, but always late. No time for watches, odd socks, a life at half-mast. Would have been a jockey if he'd been at least 2 feet shorter. Admired the rump of a good horse. Never interested in love or anything of that sort. Oh, I mean, apart from me, he calls me sis, takes me to dances. Took me to a dance once when I was young, and there I met my first boyfriend and fell in love for the very first time, possibly you could say for the only time. My mother had the gravest premonitions. But the trouble was we'd run out of cash. Daddy died derelict and moribund. My brother's name is Charlie. As for me, I was the prettiest girl in the valley, but that lasted less than a fortnight. There was apparently only one solution, and overnight my mother took it with both hands and legs. She became a courtesan of the highest possible caliber. I mean, absolutely first class. She got a medal for it once. She used to wear it on special occasions. Oh, banquets at the Royal Academy with a sash across her breasts. I quite liked her drink in those days. You could get a long way on the dregs if you were crafty. I've always been fond of the random dreg. Once you work out a system and once you're determined, I mean absolutely determined, you can lead a long and healthy life swigging down dreg after dreg after dreg at public gatherings, and nobody else knows you're doing it. And everyone else is more or less dead anyway, so moral or humanitarian considerations hardly apply. But my boyfriend came from such a charming family. They had an exquisite garden. Harmonious, he used to say, because coherent, and such a noble and impressive heritage. Unfortunately, they also ran out of cash or ran into a brick wall. I can't remember which, but it all amounted to the same thing. Despair, gnashing of teeth, hard-boiled eggs, a bit of grey lettuce, and that was about the lot. But that was only the tip of the iceberg. Murder and mayhem were not far away. I'm longing to tell my mother I met you. You are you, I take it. The man she loved above all others. Not that she loved any of the others, not in the least. I mean, not one of all the others. How could she? My father dead and distant and hardly radical politically. His motives were, of course, impeccable. He cannot be blamed. But as so often in these cases, the world passed him by. I would sometimes stroke his cheek and say, "Daddy, darling, they haven't forgotten you. People will come and put flowers on your grave and tell you their hopes and their dreams and their most secret desires because they will always retain absolute trust in you." But my mother would have nothing to do with any of it. She took me to Barbados, where I met the England and West Indian cricket teams, immaculate in white. But of course, I've travelled to many other areas of the globe after that. Honolulu, the Congo, the Bowery, the Bronx, Old Compton Street, Unter den Linden, Blackwall Tunnel, Death Valley, and Wormwood Scrubs. And I saw hordes of women and men and people of all kinds caressing each other at street corners and in all sorts of nooks and crannies, and I asked them to turn the music down. I said, "I beg you to turn it down. I beg you. I implore you to turn it down." I begged my mother to turn the music down. I said, "Didn't the doctor tell you, Mother, didn't the doctor tell you when I was little that I had very sensitive ears?" "What doctor?" she said. So I turned round and walked into a bedroom and someone fucked me.
Arthur Miller's socks. Arthur Miller and I landed at Istanbul Airport on March the 17th, 1985. We were visiting Turkey on behalf of International PEN to investigate allegations of the torture and persecution of Turkish writers. The trip got off to a bad start. I had 2 suitcases, one hadn't made it. Apart from other things, this left me with no socks. So Arthur lent me his. Bloody good ones they were, too. Made to last. We met dozens of writers. Those who had been tortured in prison were still trembling, but they insisted on giving us a drink, pouring the shaking bottle into our glasses. One of the writers' wives was mute. She'd fainted and lost her power of speech when she'd seen her husband in prison. He was out now. His face was like a permanent tear. Turkey at this time was a military dictatorship, fully endorsed by the United States. The US ambassador, hearing of our presence and thinking he was playing a clever card, gave a dinner party at the US embassy in Ankara in honor of Arthur. As I was Arthur's running mate, they had to invite me too. I'd hardly taken my first bite at the hors d'oeuvres when I found myself in the middle of a ferocious row with the US political counselor about the existence of torture in Turkish prisons. This rattled on merrily throughout dinner until finally Arthur rose to speak. Since he was the guest of honor, the floor was his, and he made it his in no uncertain terms. He discussed the term democracy and asked why, as the United States was a democracy, it supported military dictatorships throughout the world, including the country we were in. Turkey, he said, hundreds of people are in prison for their thoughts. This persecution is supported and subsidized by the United States. Where, he asked, does that leave our understanding of democratic values? The ambassador thanked him for his speech. After dinner, I thought I'd keep out of trouble for a while and went to look at the paintings. Suddenly, I saw the ambassador and his aides bearing down on me. Why they weren't bearing down on Arthur, I don't know. Perhaps he was too tall. The ambassador said to me, Mr. Pinter, you don't seem to understand the realities of the situation here. Don't forget, the Russians are just over the border. You have to bear in mind the political reality, the diplomatic reality, the military reality. The reality I've been referring to, I said, is that of electric current on your genitals. The ambassador drew himself, as they say, up to his full height and glared at me. "Sir," he said, "you are a guest in my house." He turned, as they also say, on his heel, and his aides turned too. Arthur suddenly loomed up. "I think I've been thrown out," I said. "I'll come with you," Arthur said without hesitation. Being thrown out of the US Embassy in Ankara with Arthur Miller, a voluntary exile, was one of the proudest moments of my life.
Girls. I read this short story in a magazine where a girl student goes into her professor's office and sits at his desk and passes him a note which he opens and which reads, "Girls like to be spanked." But I've lost it. I've lost the magazine, I can't find it. And I can't remember what happened next. I don't even know whether the story was faction or fict. It may have been an autobiographical fragment, but from whose point of view was the story told? The professors or the girls? I don't know, I can't remember. The blinding ignorance I'm now experiencing is the clearest and cleanest road to madness. What I want to know is quite simple. Was she spanked? If, that is, she was including herself in her all-embracing proposition. If she was including herself in her all-embracing proposition, did she personally benefit from it? Was she, not to put too fine a point on it, one of those girls? Was she, or is she, one of those girls who, according to her account, like to be spanked? If that was the case, did it happen? Did it happen in the professor's office, on the professor's desk, or not? Or what about the professor? What did he make of it all? What kind of professor was he anyway? What was his discipline? Did he find it a dubious generalization, or, at any rate, did he set out to verify it? Did he, in other words, put it to the test? Did he, for example, in other words, say, "Okay, lie on my desk, bottom up, face averted, and let's both determine whether there's substance in this assertion or not"? Or did he simply warn the student, in the interests of science, to tread warily for evermore in the perilous field of assertion? The trouble is, I can't find the magazine. I've lost it. And I've no idea how the story, or autobiographical fragment, developed. Did they fall in love? Did they marry? Did they give birth to lots of animals? A man or a woman must both have written this piece about a girl who walks into her professor's office and sits at his desk and passes him a note which he opens and which reads, "Girls like to be spanked." But I don't know his or her name. I don't know the author's identity. I simply don't know whether the girl was in fact spanked, there and then, without further ado, in the professor's office, on his desk, or at any other time, on someone else's desk, here, there, everywhere, all the time, on the hour, religiously, tenderly, fervently, ceaselessly, forever and ever and ever. But it's also possible that she wasn't talking about herself. She might not necessarily have meant that she liked to be spanked. She may have just been talking about other girls, girls she didn't even know, millions of girls she hadn't even met, would never meet, millions of girls she never had, in fact, ever heard of, millions and billions of girls on the other side of the world who, in her view, liked simply, without beating about the bush, to be spanked. Or was she talking about girls, other girls, girls born at Cockfosters or studying American literature at the University of East Anglia, who had actually told her in breathtaking spasm of spectacular candour that they, when all was said and nothing yet done, liked, when the chips were down, nothing better to be spanked? In other words, her assertion, "girls like to be spanked," might have been the climax of a long, deep, thoroughly researched course of study she had undertaken, honourably, and had honourably concluded. I love her. I love her so much. I think she's a beautiful woman. I saw her once. She turned and smiled. She looked at me and smiled. Then she wriggled to a cab in the cab rank. She gave instructions to the cab driver, opened the door, got in, closed the door, glanced at me for the last time through the window, and the cab drove off. And I never saw her again.
A wake for Sam. I first met Samuel Beckett in 1961 in Paris when my play The Caretaker was being produced. He came into the hotel walking very quickly indeed. He had a sharp stride and a quick handshake. He was extremely friendly. I'd known his work for many years, of course, but it hadn't led me to believe he'd be such a very fast driver. He drove his little Citroën from bar to bar throughout the whole evening, very quickly indeed. We finally ended up in a place in Les Halles, eating onion soup at about 4 in the morning, and I was by this time overcome through, I think, alcohol, tobacco, and excitement, with indigestion and heartburn. So I lay my head down on the table. When I looked up, he was gone. I had no idea where he'd gone, and I thought, perhaps this has all been a dream. I think I went to sleep on the table, and about 45 minutes later, the table jolted. And there he was, and he had a package in his hand, a bag, and he said, "I've been across the whole of Paris to find this. I finally found it." And he opened the bag and gave me a tin of bicarbonate of soda, which indeed worked wonders.
Message. Jill. Fred phoned. He can't make it tonight. He said he'd call you again as soon as pos. I said on your behalf, okay, no sweat. He said to tell you he was fine. Only the crap, he said, you know, it sticks. The crap you have to fight. You're sometimes nothing but a walking shithouse. I was well acquainted with the Pong myself, I told him. And I counselled calm. Don't let the fuckers get you down. Take the lid off the kettle a couple of minutes. Go on the town. Burn someone to death. Find another tart. Give us some hammer. Live while you're young, until it palls. Kick the first blind man you meet in the balls. Anyway, he'll call again. I'll be back in time for tea. Your loving mother.
From the homecoming. I mean, I'm very sensitive to atmosphere, but I tend to get desensitized, if you know what I mean, when people make unreasonable demands on me. For instance, last Christmas, I decided to do a bit of snow clearing for the Borough Council because they had heavy snow over here in Europe that year. I didn't have to do this snow clearing. I mean, I wasn't financially embarrassed in any way. It just appealed to me. It appealed to something inside me. What I anticipated with a good deal of pleasure was the brisk cold bite in the air in the early morning, and I was right. I had to get my snow boots on. I had to stand on a corner about 5:30 in the morning and wait for a lorry to pick me up, to take me to the appointed area. Bloody freezing. Well, the lorry came, I jumped on the tailboard, headlights on, dipped, and off we went. Got there, shovels up, fags on, and off we went deep into the December snow, hours before cockcrow. Well, that morning, while I was having my mid-morning cup of tea in a neighbouring cafe, the shovel standing by my chair, an old lady approached me and asked me if I would give her a hand with our iron mangle. Her brother-in-law, she said, had left it for her, but he'd left it in the wrong room. He'd left it in the front room. Well, naturally, she wanted it in the back room. It was a present he'd given her, you see, a mangle to iron out the washing, but he'd left it in the wrong room. He left it in the front room. Well, that was a silly place to leave it. Couldn't stay there. So I took time off to give her a hand. She only lived up the road. Well, the only trouble was, when I got there, I couldn't move this mangle. It must have weighed half a ton. How this brother-in-law got it up there in the first place, I can't even begin to envisage. So there I was, doing a bit of shoulders on with the mangle, risking a rupture, and this old lady just standing there, waving me on, not even lifting a little finger to give me a helping hand. So after a few minutes, I said to her, "Now look here, why don't you stuff this iron mangle up your arse?" Anyway, I said they're out of date. What you need is a spin dryer. I had a good mind to give her a workout there and then. But as I was feeling jubilant with the snow clearing, I just gave her a short arm jab to the belly and jumped on a bus outside. "Excuse me, shall I take this ashtray out of your way?"
From the collection. Bill's a slum boy, you see. He's got a slum sense of humour. That's why I never take him along with me to parties, because he's got a slum mind. I have nothing against slum minds per se, you understand, nothing at all. There's a certain kind of slum mind which is perfectly all right in a slum. But when this kind of slum mind gets out of the slum, it sometimes persists, you see. It rots everything. That's what Bill is. There's something faintly putrid about him, don't you find? Like a slug. There's nothing wrong with slugs in their place, but he's a slum slug. There's nothing wrong with slum slugs in their place, but this one won't keep his place. He crawls all over the walls of nice houses, leaving slime. Don't you, boy? He confirms stupid, sordid little stories just to amuse himself, while everyone else has to run round in circles to get to the root of the matter and smooth the whole thing out. All he can do is sit and suck his bloody hand and decompose like the filthy, putrid slum slug he is. What about another whiskey?
Meeting. It is the dead of night. The long dead look out towards the new dead walking towards them. There is a soft heartbeat as the dead embrace those who are long dead and those of the new dead walking towards them. They cry and they kiss as they meet again for the first and last time.
The special relationship. The bombs go off, the legs go off, the heads go off. The arms go off, the feet go off. The light goes out, the heads go off, the legs go off, the lust is up. The dead are dirt. The lights go out, the dead are dust. A man bows down before another man and sucks his lust.
Hallelujah! It works! We blew the shit out of them. We blew the shit right back up their own ass. Out of their fucking ears. It works! We blew the shit out of them. They suffocated in their own shit. Hallelujah! Praise the Lord for all good things. We blew them into fucking shit. They're eating it. Praise the Lord for all good things. We blew their balls into shards of dust. Into shards of fucking dust. We did it.
Now I want you to come over here and kiss me on the mouth.
Weather forecast. The day will get off to a cloudy start. It will be quite chilly. But as the day progresses, the sun will come out and the afternoon will be dry and warm. In the evening, the moon will shine and be quite bright. There will be, it has to be said, a brisk wind, but it will die out about midnight. Nothing further will happen. This is the last forecast.
Death may be aging. Death may be aging, but he still has clout. But death disarms you with his limpid light. And he's so crafty that you don't know at all where he awaits you to seduce your will and to strip you naked as you dress to kill. But death permits you to arrange your hours while he sucks the honey from your lovely flowers.
Cancer cells. Cancer cells are those which have forgotten how to die, said by a nurse at the Royal Marsden Hospital. They have forgotten how to die, and so extend their killing life. I and my tumour dearly fight. Let's hope a double death is out. I need to see my tumour dead, a tumour which forgets to die, but plans to murder me instead. But I remember how to die, though all my witnesses are dead. But I remember what they said of tumours which would render them as blind, as dumb, as they had been before the birth of that disease which brought the tumour into play. The black cells will dry up and die, or sing with joy and have their way. They breed so quietly night and day. You never know. They never say.
To my wife, I was dead, and now I live. You took my hand. I blindly died. You took my hand. You watched me die and found my life. You were my life when I was dead. You are my life, and so I live.
Death. Where was the dead body found? Who found the dead body? Was the dead body dead when found? How was the dead body found? Who was the dead body? Who was the father or daughter or brother or uncle or sister or mother or son of the dead and abandoned body? Was the body dead when abandoned? Was the body abandoned? By whom had it been abandoned? Was the dead body naked or dressed for a journey? What made you declare the dead body dead? Did you declare the dead body dead? How well did you know the dead body? How did you know the dead body was dead? Did you wash the dead body? Did you close both its eyes? Did you bury the body? Did you leave it abandoned? Did you kiss the dead body? Try again.